Good afternoon. I welcome you all on behalf of the Prayas India. This is going to be a very interesting session for all of us, and especially for you guys who are willing to give this exam for this year or the next year. Today we are going to have a very good faculty, very good motivator, and a very good mentor who is going to guide us for the UPSC session and how we will be preparing the things for UPSC, what will be the strategies. We have a very good experienced person here. The speaker is Mr. Suman sir, who has been teaching from last 6 to 7 years. Hi sir. Please switch on your camera, sir. Let the student know you are here.
Hello everyone, good afternoon.
Yeah. Hi, sir. So please guide our students who have sit here and thinking to, to learn from you. So please go ahead.
Yes, can everyone hear me? Please raise your hands if everyone can hear me. Okay, perfect. So, good afternoon, everyone. As many of you would be actually aware today that this year's UPSC notification got released today as of 4th March. So, the people who would be taking the examination this year, that is on June 27th, 2021, they need to pull their socks up, start making diligent notes, start revising all of the things that they have studied. However, the students who are new, relatively new to their journey for UPSC, they also need to look at this notification and understand. So the basic points that need to be driven home from this notification is point number 1, that is the number of vacancies. As everybody can understand and know that it is a dynamic examination, that is there is no like unlike other examinations like IIT JEE or NET and stuff where you have fixed number of seats. However, in case of UPSC, every year the number of vacancies vary, and this year the number is pegged at 712. So in general, what we can say that to fill these 712 posts, the government of India would require officers, and it is these officers who will be taken from the pool of selected candidates who successfully clear the civil services examination this year. Having said the number of vacancies, the second thing that needs to be noted is there any change of age criteria? To recapitulate everyone, what the age criteria is in terms of education, you need to have completed a graduation level course which is recognized from an all India level recognized university. However, the caveat is distance, any kind of graduation that you would have done, even if it's distance education or let's say for example Indira Gandhi National Open University, that works fine as well. However, just graduation would not be a qualifying criteria. There is a certain age limit. Rather than a limit, we should consider it as a threshold. That is, the candidate appearing or seeking to appear in this examination should be at least of 21 years of age. They should have completed. And for general candidates, the upper limit being maximum age of 32 years. Age relaxation is permitted for people belonging to SC and ST criteria as well. Having said these two things, third is the timeline of the examination. As you all know, every year, approximately towards the fag end of June, the preliminary examination is conducted. Post which, there is always a gap of 2.5 to 3 months, which is the gap that is in general given for preparation for mains examination. So for this calendar, the mains examination is scheduled in September. It is usually a window of 5 to 7 days in which you are asked to write all the mains papers, post which The people who successfully clear mains examination are taken to the level for personality test. This is the broad timeline of the examination. Let's put some numbers into it. One, in general, as of last year, 10 lakh students actually enrolled for the civil services examination. So how many people of them are actually be able to cut and go to the next stage, that is from the prelims to the main stage? Usually it is a yardstick measure that is put by UPSC, that is the number of people selected out of the prelims candidates is in general 12 to 13 times of the number of vacancies. So if you put numbers to it, this year the number of vacancies is 712. 12.5 or 12 to 13 times of it roughly translates to 8,900 candidates. So what this means is, out of all the people who will be taking the examination this year, the prelims examination on 27th June 2021, approximately 9,000 students will make it through the prelims examination and they'll be appearing for the mains. So your target being to be in the top 9,000 with regards to India, just to cut hold or to cross the threshold of the prelims. Post which, of these 9,000 students, all of them will be required to ask to take the mains examination. Beyond which, what will happen is, of those 9,000 students, there are, again, the number of vacancies is 712. So approximately 3 times that, that is, let's say 2,100 students, 2,100 students will be asked to appear for the interview, and ultimately leading to the selection of 712 candidates. Having said these numbers, initially, of course, the journey seems that, it's such an abysmal selection rate. The selection rate, you need to be the best of the best. That's what everybody says, that you need to be on the top of your game. You need to have some serious motivation. You need to be cover the whole syllabus multiple number of times. Multiple times of revision is required. All this, however, is kind of mind-boggling, right? That you really need to study so much. I often see students asking this question: so how many hours of study is required for this examination? So now somebody says that I'm studying for 6 hours, sir. Is that enough or should I increase it? However, the best thing that you need to know is, to each his own. What it means is, even if you're studying for 3 hours a day, you need to be diligent in your preparation and stay focused for those 3 hours. Of course, someday it might be 3 hours, someday it might be 4 hours, someday it might be you might be in a good mood and you can cover a lot of topics, let's say for say 6 hours. However, what you need to understand is the motivation behind it. And that's where the Prayas India would exactly come in, for you to be able to understand how to study. You have to study. However, we'll help you understand what to study, when to study, and how to study. Having said all of this, let's practically deal with one kind of situation. So, can anybody make my iPad the host? I would like to share my screen.
Yeah, sir, sure. Just a second.
So I hope everybody can see the screen. Today's webinar is exclusively something related to a hot topic in India. I see a lot of students end up asking me, sir, how to prepare for current affairs. The thing is, most of the students don't understand or forget to analyze that current affairs is a part of dynamic study. However, it is somehow linked to the static part as well. For example, all the students would be aware that there's a subject called geography, that all of us are asked to study. There's history, there's political dynamics of India and the world. There's economics and whatnot. All of these subjects. Can you please know that I actually didn't write current affairs to it? Because current affairs, the whole knowledge of current affairs can be understood that it's somehow linked to geography. The same topic can be linked to history. The same topic can be linked to political dynamics, geopolity of the world, and where or how it affects India. And it can be an economic topic as well. And is this something intriguing? To be able to understand that, let's consider the whole journey of this single word called oil. So, what do we know of oil? The main topic or the main thing that we know is sky high prices in India. A couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, petrol prices and diesel prices all across India touched almost the price of 100. And now, just day before yesterday, or we saw that the prices of LPG has also risen, and it's been more than 8 times the prices have risen. So, having understood all of this, there are numerous articles, numerous coverages, numerous media covering this whole genre of topics, saying that oil prices are in an all-time high. Some interpretations being or understood that the state government is responsible. Some saying that the central government is responsible. Then there's always the plausible debate that whether truly how much the central government is responsible or how much the state government is responsible. But as a UPSC aspirant, this today, I will just show you a glimpse how to dispassionately look towards one topic and to be able to connect it to geography, to history, to political dynamics, to economics, and whatnot. So if we consider oil, this whole journey, it starts with crude oil. So there's the part of geography, that is, you need to be able to understand how crude oil is formed, where crude oil is found, how much or which country has more amount of crude oil, for example, and then link it to statistical data. Why statistical data and analysis will help you is it will help you write the answer for mains examination, because ultimately what matters is you need to be selected as an officer. So to do that, you should not look at prelims as an isolation, mains as an isolation, or interview on a second hand per se. Having understood, let's look at the whole consolidated story. If I tell you the word oil, you need to instantly be able to recollect that, okay, sir, the journey of oil starts from crude oil, and in crude oil, we need to know that why it matters to India. Is, of course, we are the second most populous country in the world after China. So, of course, and going by the amount of development that the nation is undergoing, it's absolutely understood that, we consume a lot of amount of oil. So how much do we consume? In India is actually the third largest consumer of oil. This is one level of knowledge that, okay, you are aware that India is the third largest consumer of oil. How much oil is consumed? That data is in public domain as well. That is, you need to understand that, for example, over the last year, the period of 2019-20, India actually consumed approximately 256 mmtpa. This is a unit by which you measure oil, which is million metric tons per annum. Per annum, of course, a yearly basis. And this is million metric tons. So that's a really big amount. 256 mmtpa was actually the amount of oil. And then all of this needs to get refined. So yes, sir, from crude oil, the journey goes to a refinery. And there you need to know, you can create a map of India, which has the location of where all the refineries are located. Why is this relevant for UPSC, sir? Because, my dear, you will know that if you map all the refineries, most of the refineries are actually on the coast. Why they are on the coast? Because India imports most of its crude oil. And because we import most of the crude oil, most of it comes by sea. And because most of it comes by sea, it absolutely makes sense that to minimize transportation costs, you need to have refineries which are located directly on the coasts or especially in the vicinity of ports. Are you able to see that slowly we are building up the connection? Taking it further, then we see the refining capacity of India. Why the refining capacity of India is important? Because India is definitely not self-sufficient with regards to crude oil, because we import more than 87% of it. As a matter of fact, only 13% of it is produced in India domestically. Who? India, oil is produced in India. Of course, in Mumbai, we have Bombay High. In Assam, we have Duliajan, Digboy, Numaligarh, several kind of small oil wells where we can say that we meet approximately 13% of our needs and 87% of it is imported. All of this crude oil needs to get refined. However, the beauty of India is in terms of refining capacity, our refining capacity exceeds our net imports. Why is that important, sir? Because oil refining is a highly capital intensive industry. That is, it requires a lot of investment to you or to the government or to a private individual, whoever establishes an oil refinery. It's a significant amount of investment. So if we are projected that the demand for oil is going to increase in India, refineries cannot be just increased as in tomorrow the demand increases and day after tomorrow we have a lot of refineries. That's just not possible. So to eyeing the future demand, the government of India, mark my words, the government of India, why? Because of the total refining capacity that we have in India, more than 70% of it is actually owned by the government refineries. And rest 30% is owned by one private party, which is Reliance. Reliance has two oil refineries in Jamnagar, which are the largest oil refineries in the world. Having understood this, for example, this is the beautiful story that I would like to show you. This was the approximate demand. This is the approximate refining capacity this year. And we see that India is more than sufficient in this respect. And then comes from refineries, the story proceeds to something called oil marketing companies. Why are these important? Because bringing crude oil to India is the job of refineries because it's a raw material for them. From the refineries, that is from the gate of the refineries, this oil or whatever produces happen, for example, petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel, naphtha, LPG, CNG, and all these petroleum products, they need to be brought to the consumers. And that's when oil marketing companies come in because they essentially market the products. And then ultimately you have something called dealers. So that's the whole network of or the journey of crude oil from being imported to India to the point of where we get it from dealers in the form of petrol pumps, what we say. So this is the whole value chain of oil in India. Everybody says that the government is charging a huge amount of tax. But once let's trace the journey of from where this taxation starts. initial logic or the first level of knowledge might be the government is charging a lot of tax on per liter of petrol and per liter of diesel. This is what most of the newspaper articles that you would read would actually show. However, you need to understand that because the journey started from crude oil, is crude oil taxed in India? That's the question that you need to look at. Of course, crude oil is definitely taxed in India because it is an imported product. It is subject to custom duty. What are the heads of the custom duty, sir? In which you need to be able to see that this custom duty, the first thing being which is called basic custom duty. This basic custom duty stands at a figure of 1 rupee per metric ton. Remember, what was the demand of oil, of crude oil in India? Approximately 226 million metric tons. So, if you charge 1 rupee per metric ton, this translates to 226 million, right? Or an amount of 22.6 crores. So the government of India gets a value of 22.6 crore rupees only from charging basic custom duty. That's the first step. Then you have something called National Calamity Contingent Duty. So what is this National Calamity Contingent Duty? You can consider it's exactly like insurance. Like when we save money as individuals, we save money because of the thing that, in the future we might have some exigency or some kind of emergency where it can be medical, it can be natural disaster, it can be anything where we require money. So this is the money that the government of India saves for itself to protect India or to use this fund in cases of any event of such natural calamities. That is 50 rupees per metric ton. Why is this important, sir? You see, we started the journey from crude oil, and then here we see that it is from crude oil, the government of India charges a tax called National Calamity Contingent Duty, which goes to something which we call National Disaster Relief Fund. So what the beauty of this examination is, from crude oil, you got to know that somehow the government is charging a money which goes to National Disaster Relief Fund. So then the third thing that you need to see is something called countervailing duty. A additional countervailing duty of 1 rupee per metric ton is charged. So this is where the journey of crude oil ends. So you have custom duty. Custom duty's classification is basic custom duty. You have national calamity contingent duty, and you have countervailing duty. It is these three duties which are charged on crude oil. Having said this, what we need to see, for example, is if we put some numbers to national calamity contingent duty, this is the amount of fund that goes into it, an approximate amount of 1135 crore rupees on an annual basis. Why is this figure important? Because let's say you have an earthquake next year. God forbid, it shouldn't happen. However, let's say there's a big calamity like a flood, and immediately the government of India announces a support of, let's say, a sum of 2000 crore rupees or 200 crore rupees or 500 crore rupees as support to that state. As a UPSC aspirant, you need to be able to trace back that, what are the origins of that fund. It is actually not the benevolence of the government who's paying that fund, but ultimately it's the people of India who pay for that fund in the form of taxes like this. So of course, when the reason being why you need to understand these heads is, for example, initially when everybody says, sir, the government of India is charging exorbitant amount of taxes in India on fuel. However, from the perspective of morality and ethics and justice, social, economic, and political, as envisaged in our constitution, can you say that the people of India should not pay this? Of course not, because this is what the people of India are paying for their own security. right? So it does not put a moral obligation that, we ask the government that please remove this tax. Having said it, sir, so can't the government remove any kind of tax? Well, in crude oil, it cannot. But what about the next step in the journey? That is from manufacturing of petrol or diesel. So the next step that we have is, once petrol and diesel is kind of manufactured, because crude oil is the input, it is processed, and then you have an output which is in the form of petrol, diesel, and all these products. So these are essentially manufacturing. And in manufacturing, you need to understand that it's not customs, but it's excise duty. So let's consider the model example of petrol and the model example of diesel. So if there's petrol and diesel, similarly to basic custom duty that we had on crude oil, the first step is basic excise duty. This is charged on per liter basis. So for petrol, this figure stands at 1.4 rupees per liter. For diesel, it stands at 1.8 rupees per liter. The beauty is okay. So this is extremely less. It's just 1 rupee. Okay. Then you have something called special additional duty. The duty is as vague as it sounds: special, additional, and duty. But the amount, not, it's extremely huge. 11 rupees per liter, both for petrol and diesel. So this is a big tax that we are paying. And where is this special additional duty going? It is the disposition of the government of India. On top of it, you have something called road and infrastructure cess. Yes, sir. Basically, when someone asks a question, why do road tax exist in India? Or why do we pay tolls when we go on a highway? It is pretty pertinent question. However, the answer usually is that if you drive a car on the road, the onus is on you to pay for the road. But not many people would be aware that even the petrol that you're putting in your car, the government of India is charging a tax out of it to make those roads. And that is a significant amount. It's 18 rupees per liter, both for petrol and diesel. And as if that was not enough, in this budget, that is in the budget for 2020, 21, 22, Nirmala Sitharaman, our Honorable Finance Minister, announced an additional agriculture and infrastructure development cess, which is 2.5 rupees per liter on petrol and 4 rupees per liter on diesel. Sir, already we are seeing 1 rupee here, 11 rupee here, so that's 12 rupees. Again, we are seeing 18 rupees, that's 30 rupees. Again, we are seeing 2.5. So approximately already we have hit a tally of 32.5 rupees of taxation on petrol. And the number is also similar to that in diesel as well. How much is 32 rupees for tax? You really want to know the price of crude? This is where you need to think. What is the international price for crude oil? In terms of barrels, if you see crude oil in the international market, it is sold in barrels. Unlike in liters. The end product, of course, it's sold in liters like petrol, diesel, and stuff. However, the raw material is stored in the form of barrels. Usually in the Hindu and other languages, other newspapers, we see that, we often see headlines saying, sir, the petrol per barrel crude price crossed $60, $70. Even if you consider $60 per barrel and assuming a foreign exchange rate of 70, just for the sake of calculation, what it means is 4,200 rupees per barrel. And how much does 1 barrel of oil contain? 1 barrel of oil is 159 liters. 1 barrel equals 159 liters. So translating, the cost of crude oil per liter comes out to be approximately 30 rupees per liter, sir. So on 30 rupees of per liter of oil, the government of India is already putting a tax of 32.5 or more than 100%. In terms of GST, The highest percentage of GST that we have in India for luxury goods is a figure of 28%. And everybody of us, or you people, must be aware that petroleum products are not under the purview of GST in India. What is the reason? Because consider this thing, that already if you put petroleum products into the kitty of GST, the maximum tax as of now that you can charge is 28%. However, here we are seeing that on something which is costing 30 rupees per liter, the government of India has already put a tax of 32.5, that is in excess of 100%. That is good big amount of tax we're paying, my friends. However, that is just half of the story. Why half of the story? Because this excise duty and custom duty, all of this actually goes into the kitty of the government of India. Where does state government come into this picture? To be able to understand, it's almost you need to consider is state government just puts tax on top of this. And since the taxation of state government varies from state to state, that is the reason of why we have difference in prices of diesel, petrol, and other such products across different countries and across different cities in India. A liter of petrol costs 96 rupees in Mumbai as we speak. In Delhi, it is 89. Why? Because the government of Delhi has a different tax regime compared to the government of Maharashtra. So, for example, just for the sake of convenience, if we consider the case of Maharashtra, on top of all these taxes that have been put by the central government, the Maharashtra government puts VAT, value added tax. On top of it, they also put something called special additional tax. And in case of Maharashtra, friends, you would know that there are two kinds of taxes for petrol in Maharashtra. One is a tax slab and a rate for cities like Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and Thane, and the other relatively lesser amount of tax regime for rest of Maharashtra. So the same product, it's just the same product. It does not only cost different in different states, but here as we see it, it's also costing different in terms of different cities. Isn't that interesting and intriguing? So if you consider a kind of a regime, there you see that the state government is putting a tax of 32.9 rupees, and the Maharashtra government is putting a tax of 27.98, which is almost amounting to 30 on something. When I was actually writing it, the price of crude oil per liter was 28.80. So something which costs 28.80, the central government is putting almost 100% of tax, the state government is putting almost 100% of tax, and there's a dealer margin, there's purification cost, there's freight. You need to be able to account for all of these costs. So on something, let's say something which is X, the price is almost 3x, with 1x or 100% going to the central government and 1x going to the state government. So having understood this much dispassionately, is it true to say that only the state government is responsible for taxation on or high taxes on petrol? Is it pertinent to say that only the central government is taxing too much? No, both are almost equally responsible. Some cases it might be 60-40, some cases it might be 50-50, some cases it might be 40-60. However, the onus is definitely on the state government and the central government. Having understood this much dispassionately, the next level of knowledge that we need to have is, okay, this much tax is fine. However, despite having such huge taxes, we still have a deficit budget. This concept, see, from prices of crude oil, we were able to link that despite such high taxes on fuel, we still have a deficit budget. That is, the expenditure amount of government of India exceeds the amount of revenue that the government of India earns. So oil prices can be linked to budget as well. Having understood this, let's put again some numbers into it. Okay, road and infrastructure cess. The government is charging 18 rupees per liter for petrol. Multiply this by the total demand of petrol in India. And similarly, do the story for diesel as well. Then you will see that the government of India is actually earning 2,41 crores 182 crore rupees just by taxing this. Sir, why is this, friends? Why is this huge number relevant? Because in this budget, the government of India allotted approximately 2,22,000 crore rupees for construction of roads in 5 states. And those 5 states where elections are due this year. And to top of it, it is these 5 states where the BJP is not in power. Let's not get into the game of politics. However, it is at your disposition to see that out of this much money, which every citizen of India is somehow contributing to it by purchase of petrol or diesel, how democratic it is to allocate more than 90% of this fund to only 5 states. Okay, you can say that India is a federal constitution, India is a federal form of government where India is, at the end of the day, India is one. It should not matter which state is developed. You should look at a holistic big project. However, given or said that, okay, this is used for 5 states. If you understand the total amount of kilometers allotted, this much money was actually allotted to 6575 kilometers only. Divide this figure by 6575 and you would reach a figure or a per kilometer construction cost that the government of India projects is 34 crore rupees. Is it less? Is it more? Putting some statistics into it, you need to see that this is at least 2 times the cost of construction of a road in the US, which is the most developed country in the world. Is this truly the cost of construction? An allocation of 34 crore rupees for 1 kilometer? This question. So as a civil servant aspirant or a civil services aspirant, someone who's diligently preparing for UPSC, we understood oil, we understood the value chain of oil, we understood where all the governments are taxing this, we understood how much the government is taxing. Out of how much the government is taxing, we saw that how much the government is earning out of it. And having earned this much, how much is the government allocating it to different states? So oil prices in India, of course, they are running high because the government is taxing more than 100%. We have a GST regime where the highest percentage of tax is 28%. And here we see that the tax, imagine if you put petrol and petroleum products into the purview of GST, you need to have a tax of at least, let's say, 210%. Is that even considerable? As knowledgeable citizens of India, we need to hold the government accountable for it. And that is how you do an analysis of a current affairs topic. You can link it to history, you can link it to economics, you can link it to geography. We understood the economic part of it. But how about this is linked to polity, rising oil prices? What we need to understand here is, again, oil. India imports most of it from Middle East. That is given, said and done. In the Middle East, we have OPEC, which is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which in essence is controlled by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was extremely good friends with USA, and this, however, this used to hold true when Mr. Donald Trump was the US president. However, now that Mr. Trump has lost the election and Joe Biden is in power, so this relation has soured. Why it has soured? You can link it to the killing of Mr. Jamal Khashoggi. Okay, so now that Joe Biden has risen to power, Saudi Arabia, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and US has soured. What has happened is Saudi Arabia, in an effort to establish their positions, they decided to cut down on the supply of oil. So oil is a relatively inelastic thing. Someone who's using oil will definitely continue to use oil. We all need petrol, diesel, and all these products. So Saudi Arabia, what they did is they were extremely diligent and extremely, prudent about it. So what they did was the demand cannot change, the demand cannot decrease. The supply, however, they can cut the supply. So MBS, Muhammad bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, they decided to cut down on the oil production by more than 1 million barrels per day. That's a huge figure, 1 million barrels per day. And imagine the amount of pressure that Saudi Arabia must have built. So global oil prices rose. And if global oil prices rose, it's obvious that the price or costing of crude oil would rise, and ultimately it is somehow affecting India. This is one aspect of it. To say that, when governments or our governments and our ministers are saying because of rising oil prices in the Middle East and per barrel cost or international oil price rose, and that's the reason oil, petrol, and diesel got expensive in India. However, as an aspirant, you need to be able to link that the price, this story, the price of oil rose because someone killed someone in the Middle East. For example, the other aspect to look at it is when Trump was in power, Trump at the same time had trade sanctions against Iran. Why? Because Iran was in conflict with Saudi Arabia, and Iran and Saudi Arabia were in conflict because Saudi Arabia was friends with USA. But now that Trump is no longer in power and Joe Biden is in power, trade sanctions against Iran has been lifted. And if trade sanctions in Iran have been lifted, this is where Mr. Modi's political dynamics have played in, wherein the day Mr. Joe Biden got in power, India started to talk again with Iran to be able to import cheap oil. India was not able to do so because of against US trade sanctions. So, my friends, from rising oil prices, you're seeing how it is linked to geopolitics. So that is how you need to be able to link things. That is how you need to be able to think, analyze, understand, and interpret a subject, a current affairs topic, linking it to multiple subjects. This will help you not just clear prelims, but it will also help you clear mains as well. Having said all of this, or having given you a small, brief, intriguing glimpse of how one small topic can be linked to all these subjects, now I throw open the floor that if you have any kind of questions or any kind of help or any kind of doubts, please feel free to ask. Please raise your hands if you want to be unmuted and ask a couple of questions. Someone raised hands, no? Yeah, I'm just checking. I have to talk.
Hello, good evening, sir. Please speak in Hindi.
Please go ahead and ask your questions. We have given you permission to talk. Please unmute.
What?
Please ask your questions.
Hello.
I can see someone is asking what should be the strategy for 2022.
Hello.
Okay. So the big and most important aspect of how we just showed you a glimpse of preparation. You need to be on the top of your game to be able to understand. Start with basics
Please
first.
speak
Read
in Hindi.
NCRTs. It can be someone, start from the basics, even if it's a class 6 NCRT book, because everyone says that you need to study NCRT from class 6 to 12. However, given the age that you are in, a class 6 book on science or a class 6 book on geography or a class science book on social science should practically not take more than a couple of days. Start with the basics and then eventually start covering each topic in detail. And in due time, if you have a proper guidance like the ones that we give at here, the Prayas India, you have a good mentor, and that's when you will start linking things: current affairs, history, geography, polity, economics, the static knowledge. Once you have acquired the static knowledge, and then you will be able to interpret. It's not just about reading one topic per se. You take a topic, you analyze it dispassionately, you look at the force, you look at the do's, you look at the don'ts, you look at the good aspect of it, you look at the other aspect of it. Consider farming. Farm laws or farmers are protesting. You need to be able to delve deep into it to see that why farmers are protesting, why the government has done what it has done, why the Supreme Court is doing what it's doing, and then you would have completely dispassionately analyzed and linked everything, and that will not only just help you understand and prepare for this examination. However, it will also make you a conscious citizen of India. Okay. Someone is asking how much percentage of current affairs is there in mains and pre. See, it's related to UPSC. One thing is you cannot look at anything in isolation. For example, you cannot put a question or say that this question is from this topic or this subject. Having said that, however, usually what the trend has shown is current affairs or exact current affairs at least has been dominating somewhat, let's say 30%, 30 to 35% in the strictest sense. However, current affairs, or to be able to analyze and understand it, that is exactly what will help you carry forward in mains examination. I see someone has asked, sir, the Hindu newspaper is enough for current affairs. Everybody says, read the editorial of Hindu, read Yojana, read Kurukshetra, read News Digest, look at Rajya Sabha TV. The list is unending. The key to understand this is, it's not about reading a topic, it's about understanding the topic. For example, if it comes, the example that we saw here, oil or oil prices in India, we saw that it is linked to geopolitics, it is linked to economics, it is linked to union budget, it is linked to oil deficit, it is linked to international oil prices, it is linked to where exactly we have oil, and it is linked to the government's perspective as well. So once you just need to be able to form all these links and understand it, look at the big picture. And once you start looking at the big picture, the job is more than done. I can see another question. How much static part comes in mains GS especially? See, it is exactly, it is these kind of questions where I always keep telling you, you should not look at anything in isolation. don't don't please, it consider it as an advice, as a request, as a, coming from a mentor. However, don't look at any one subject or any one topic or anything in isolation. Understand how it is affected to India. That is, if you read anything related to climate, related to environment, related to economy, related to money, related to financing, related to development, related to poverty, or whatever it may, just understand, try to link it to the Constitution of India, try to link it to the people of India, try to link it to the government of India. Because see, ultimately the ultimate goal of UPSC is to actually look for those kind of candidates who have an administrative spirit in them, and at the same time who are extremely knowledgeable. That is, they need to be able to see the big picture, how a single decision is affecting or influencing all these causative factors. That is the key that they're looking for. There's a reason of why. Consider this, there's an absolute beautiful reason of why mains examination exists. They could have just done it as another objective had it just been test of knowledge. However, they need people who understand how externalities affect India and how India can change the status quo. That is, how India can change its stature and position in the global scenario. And for to be able to think like that, you need to be able to study like that. And that's where people at Prayas India are more than capable to be able to inculcate that spirit and that logical thought process in your mind. Please raise your hands if you have any further questions, or you can put it in chat as well. So guys, I hope this wasn't such an insightful session where you were able to see a small glimpse of what we do at the Prayas India. We have another question here. It's saying, is completing general studies first, then optional is good or not? Because many toppers had already said that completing optional is good. See, Shweta, what happens is, of course, choice of optional is extremely important. The reason being, out of all the qualifying papers, you have, in essence, essay, GS1, GS2, GS3, GS4. These are the judging papers, in addition of which you have optional 1 and optional 2. So these are the all papers that are considered for merit. In general, what it is considered is, optional is usually considered scoring. Please understand that what this scoring means. if you look at the understand the analysis of any topper's answer sheet, you will see that the aggregate mark almost touches something like 50%. This is not an examination like our board examination where you need to score 90%, 95%, 96. It's not an exam like that. So what happens is, if it's just a 50%, you need to be able to score. So how you can do that is, you can have 50 in all of it, or, so here is what, if you consider the concept of averages, you can have, if you score 50% in each paper, still you'll get 50% on the average, right? However, what it is considered is the incremental effort, that is the amount of effort by which you can increase this 50%, that is from optionals, the amount of effort, if you put in the amount of effort required to take this, let's say from 50 to 60, उस हिसाब से if you consider, if you put in that much effort to any of these papers, consider essay also, somewhat you can increase to 60%, let's say, just a 10% increment, but significant amount of improvement is required to improve in these. So to avoid that, what it is said is, if you take a good optional, something that you have an interest on, something that you have the willingness to study for, and something that you find extremely intriguing, if you take something like that, it is relatively easier for you to score in these two papers. And if you can increase your score just a bit more, it's a kind of an examination where every single mark counts and every single effort counts. Every single drop matters, no matter how big or how small the ocean or the glass is. Every single drop counts. So that way, it's relatively easier for you to score in the optional, but that, on the other hand of it, it absolutely does not mean that you can afford to neglect or not study GS or essay. Having said it, you need to understand that every person has got their own strategy, to be able to delineate the time that they need to do it. So in essence, to each his own. Do we have any further questions? I hope I was able to make at least a little bit clear or show you a small glimpse of what we do here at the Prayas India. We teach you, we start from teaching the basics. It can be something very vague or something very small. Like, for example, in today we started off with one sentence saying that the prices of oil have risen in India. It's a current affairs question, but we took that piece of question and then we saw that, how we are able to link it to history, geography, economics, polity, and whatsoever. We have another question. It says, how much marks are recommended for the IPS post? The question was from Yogesh. Okay. So Yogesh, what happens in general is, I told you the notification got released this year, and this year you have 712 vacancies. 712 vacancies. So what happens, Yogesh, is, I'll tell you. I told you this many candidates are selected for sure. Okay. That is, this is the first figure. This is the exact number, the exact division. That is how many people or how many IAS are required in India, how many IPS or how many IFS. This whole list is actually it comes under the purview of the Department of Personnel and Training. They will have the exact data that this year how many IAS officers are required, how many IPS officers are required, how many IFS officers are required. For the purpose of sanctity, let us assume, just, I'm not saying that this is the figure, let us just assume that for now, theoretically, you require 200 IPS officers. So what happens is, once you pass the prelims stage, during mains, you need to fill up something called a DAF, which is a detailed application form, in which you need to give your preference for services. That is your first preference, your second preference, your third preference, fourth preference, and so on. There's no limit on the number of preferences that you can give. If someone wants to have a form where you want to fill in all the preferences of all the services, you can do that as well. And if you are just willing, let's say for IAS, IPS, IFS, or you have a choice of 6 or 7 services that you specifically want to go or something, you can put. So it's up to your own discretion. There's always a yardstick that it is good measure to be able to put everything, all the services. However, having said it, what I mean to tell you is, let's consider that hypothetically in this year, all the toppers want to be IPS officers. Ideally, let's say no one wants to be this year, all the toppers. Then what happens is, if all the toppers want to be IPS officers, everybody would have mentioned IPS as their topmost preference, right? So if there are 200 seats, the top 200 candidates who, in terms of scoring, they will become IPS officers. And the candidate who gets selected, the last candidate, that is the 200th candidate who gets selected for IPS, will have a certain score. So that can be considered as a cutoff score. So this whole exam is dynamic in nature. You cannot end up putting a yardstick or a measure saying that, if you are able to score this much, you will definitely become an IPS officer. So, it entirely depends not only just on you, but on how or what are the preferences of other students as well. So do we have any further questions? See, we have a beautiful question by Shamika. Shamika ended up saying that which is an example of a good optional where we can score more. Again, it's such a intriguing question, because let's say, statistically it has been seen, or if you go ruffle across history, and if you see check the toppers who have been, if someone is a topper, I mean he has scored the maximum in the aggregate, right? So someone who's from mathematics background, or someone who took mathematics, they became a topper. Someone who chose mechanical engineering, becoming a topper. Someone who choosing geography, becoming a topper. Someone choosing statistics, becoming a topper. Someone who's an MBBS, choosing that and becoming a topper. So what it means is, it's entirely, it drops down to you and your performance, and how much is your depth and level of understanding for those 3 hours of which you're taking the examination. 3 hours for those both optional subjects, which is like 6 hours of writing. So the entire disposition or how you perform is entirely on you. Don't just speculate that okay, this year's topper was from geography, so I should take geography, or this year's topper, I am from arts background, so I should take for history. I have got a personal endeavor, and I've personally seen that a mechanical engineer taking history as an optional subject and clearing the UPSC. I mean, after having studied mechanical engineering, studying history per se would have been definitely difficult for that guy. Okay, friends, I guess it was, I really was happy talking to all of you. I hope sincerely that I have done justice to all of your time, that I have somehow shown a glimpse of what we do here at the Prayas India. And I just hope that I have inspired you enough to at least know when to start and how to start your preparation, how to be able to link all the subjects, how to be able to get into the, the lowest level of a subject, and then zooming backwards and looking at the big picture, how to understand that, a small thing like, I know killing of a person should not be considered as a small thing. However, having said that, how one person or one country killing someone somehow is responsible for how, the global oil prices getting affected, and how that is affecting India as a country, and how that is, trickling down or pinching a poor man's pocket. So I guess I was able to make the story interesting. So see you again next time sometime, and over to you, Preeti.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. It was a great learning from you. That was and thank you so much for giving your precious time to us. And your guidance was really helpful for all of us. And I feel the students would be also happier listening you. And students, thank you so much for attending our webinar. We have some more webinar listed there on our website also. You can just go through it, and you can just register over there, and you can come back again. So tomorrow also we have on the same time, that is 3 p.m. onwards. So you all can connect, and you all can meet a new person. Might be similar to Subhan sir, would be a great speaker, and great will be guiding you in a very well mannered. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And really, it was a great day. Thank you so much.